Clarissa, darling.
I should just face it. I'm boring.
It's not that I hate my family. It's just that, well, they're my family.
Just don't expect me to be the award-winning genius like Annie.
That's Sam. We're buds.
Everyone here hates me.
I like you.
No offense, Ray, but I'm gonna need more than you to survive here.
This is Ferguson, my brother.
I want to cover this entire neighborhood by nightfall.
Welcome to Splat Attack, a 90s podcast honoring the slime-filled past. I'm your fourth wall-breaking fashionista, Kat.
And I'm your hat-wearing, puddle-morphing teenager, Alex. And Kat.
Yeah.
Why is your office decorated like Clarissa Darling's bedroom?
Oh, I mean, I found some props and set dressing in the warehouse next to the studio. And, I think it was Sir Isaac Newton who once said, "Truth is ever to be found in simplicity. But how am I supposed to keep things simple when I'm inclined to explain it all?"
Kat, this week is supposed to be our Alex Mack character profile.
Huh. And that's why you've been hauling lab equipment to the soundstage all week.
Yep.
Huh. All right. Well, it's going to be a little awkward. Hi, Mitchell.
Oh! Wow, it's Mitchell Kriegman. How are you? That's a surprise.
I'm good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
See, I thought this week was the Clarissa profile, so I invited Mitchell onto the show. Wait,
I can go. I can leave.
no.
I didn't
it's just-
Stay around.
I can go. I can go.
No.
I mean, you're already
Alex,
here.
hang on, wait a minute. I just noticed Alex,
Uh,
is the liquid you're holding in that beaker, is it waving at me? What is that?
Well,
Wait.
actually, funny enough, it's Tom Lynch. I invited him for the Alex Mack profile. How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Yeah.
Mitchell.
Yeah.
Mitchell. I love Mitchell Kriegman.
Yeah,
He's my
yeah,
dog,
yeah,
my
yeah,
North Star.
Oh man, I'm so excited about this. This is our first new segment, or not really segment, but format for the episode. We've been pitching this idea around for a while, back behind the scenes of let's break away from doing episode studies and start doing some character studies. And for a while it was kind of a versus concept, and we've already got enough versus stuff going on. And I don't know, it didn't feel right to pick two characters versus against each other. I don't want to do that. So we wanted to pick two characters that are similar and really just analyze what they're like, how they're similar, how they're different, and really just talk about what we love about both of these characters. And whenever we came up with this idea, and the first one was, well, let's look at Clarissa. Who's like Clarissa? And I mean, without even a second's hesitation, oh, Alex Mack. And then we just started going off on these ideas of how they're similar. And so we gotta see if we can get these two guys who had a hand absolutely in creating these characters. And I had reached out to both Tom and Mitchell, and Tom was the first one that I had gotten connected with. And I'm not making this up. I was at rehearsal for a play, and I was just sitting in the auditorium, and I got an email. And the very next email was it had been from Tom. It said, "Hey, meet Mitchell." I'm going, what? Because Tom had already said, I absolutely love Mitchell, and then had actually established connection between us. And I was already hyped that I was meeting Tom, but now I'm meeting Tom and Mitchell. And the cast can tell you, I was shaking. My hands were shaking. My adrenaline was running so much because I was so excited to meet both of you. So thank you both so very much for being here.
you.
It's truly an honor.
Oh, well, now it's not a big deal. You can see there's no reason at all. It's totally boring. What's the big deal?
Not even remotely. Not even remotely.
I'm nerding out right now. Like, I'm trying to be composed, but my brain is just all lit up. Like, so jazz hands. No, this is great. Thank you guys.
Well, I guess a good place to start before we really get diving into the characters themselves is how did your shows come to be? Was Nickelodeon looking for something specific? What was your initial pitches? And I guess and before we started the episode, Tom was saying that there would be no Alex without Clarissa. So, Mitchell, how did the idea of Clarissa get started, and what was the pitch like?
Very kind of him. Well, it was a funny little origin because Nick had not done a sitcom before, and they hadn't done very much original programming. And I actually had a deal with another writer, and it was like a really goofy deal to do some kind of alien Parent Trap show. It was really a terrible, you don't know this, Tommy. It was really a terrible idea. And he was a more senior writer than me, and he knew them at Nick a little bit more than I did. And so he convinced them to let him do this show, right? And then I'd never written a sitcom before. And then right before right before I was supposed to get going, he took a job in LA with Norman Lear because he was going to LA and become famous. He was going to be famous, right? And I personally had no desire to ever work for Norman Lear or go to LA at all. So I inherited this sitcom and this deal, and they inherited me. And I don't think they knew really anything about me. They were stuck. Which is the only way I can get in anywhere, so it worked out. And anyway, that's enough backstory on it. But so I started thinking about, well, here's what happened that was actually really super cool at that point, is that I met with Herb and Jerry, and I asked them who their audience was. And Nick was just really starting. And they did the wonderful favor of giving me all their major research they had done on what a kid was like and who the kids were those days. Do you remember the Mueller? I think it was called the Mueller report or something like that. They would refer to it. And and they shared their data, which nobody would ever do again, right? They shared all their data, and I really read it.
Right.
And I started looking at it thinking, oh my God, they really need, I decided they really needed a person, a character, because they were all game shows and other stuff. And then so they needed a personality. And then the next thing they needed was a girl, I decided, because it was the most forward moving thing you could do in the moment, because girls were just starting to become more ascendant in being who they were and what they were doing. I happened to be married at the time to a woman who was an editor at 17 magazine. So I had the full indoctrination, and I, had access to learn all sorts of great stuff in order to do it. So that was the origin of, and I set out to write a sitcom, which I'd never written. I'll never forget sitting there trying to figure out how to do it. And then I built around this girl character, and they loved it. I mean, they loved the idea of it.
Amazing. I love that. I love that you went to Norman Lear. I wrote my first sitcom with Norman, like literally with Norman Lear, where he was in an office buying the Declaration of Independence, and I'm typing out some stupid thing. It was hysterical. That memory always, my memory of my time with Norman was always wonderful and frightening simultaneously.
Yeah, well, I never met him, and I never moved, but my partner, at the time, there was I was very anti-California at the time. I wasn't it was a New York, California thing.
Yes.
And we used to make lots of jokes. And then once he moved over to Norman Lear, he was sacrosanct about showbiz. I couldn't make any more jokes. We didn't stay friends very long.
Right. Did he have a career?
Not nearly as wonderful as mine, but yeah, he had a career.
Who has?
Well, Tom, what about you? How did the inspirations for your show come about?
The inspiration was very basic. Like all of my shows, they come from something in my life. So my father was a nuclear physicist. he was working with radioactive materials, like what they
He's
call
making
radioactive
all this up,
granular
by the way.
material.
This is
and
completely
rabbits.
made up. None of this, not one iota of what
No.
he's saying right now. It just shows you what a great writer he is, right?
Well, I'm riveted. I'm riveted.
So he would leave this stuff in the garage. And I thought, one day, what would happen if you ate that stuff? And that was really GC 161, and that was all that stuff. But the way I got to Nickelodeon was I was doing a show called Writers in the Sky for CBS, a Saturday morning show. And I'd done this show called Kids Incorporated before that. And so a guy, Jay Mulvaney, God rest his soul, showed up one day and said, and he was very theatrical, "We want you to create shows for Nickelodeon." I said, "Well, great. Here's my deal. 6 scripts, and 2 got to go to pilot or whatever. Something's got to go." He said, "Okay." And I wrote 1 pilot, which was Alex Mack. The other 5 never done, never were done. And I wanted to do the thing where it's interesting when Mitchell talking about a sitcom. I wanted to do a cinematic telling in kids television. That was my inspiration. Was Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, I'm sitting in the theater with my kids. I have a bunch of kids, and I don't know, they were little at that time, so I don't know what I was doing, but we're watching the movie, and I'm going, "Oh, kids like this, so why isn't this on television for them?" And that defined the single camera-ness of it. You know what I mean? That was like the difference of where he had a multi-camera and I had a single camera. And I think it was as we both were first, because they hadn't done a multicam before you, Mitchell, had they? They'd just done some sketch stuff. And they certainly had no idea what a single camera was, which was great because either did I. But I said, that's just what I'm going to go do. And they liked the script. And as I said earlier to you guys, I got 1 note on that script, and it's due to Mitchell. Is they said Alex was written as a boy. He was based on my friend Alex Watt, was the character who came in, and they said, "Can you change it to a girl?" And I thought, as I said, I have 4 sons, I'm 5 brothers. Sure, no problem. Let me change it to a girl. And I think the magic that it taught me more than anything was I didn't put any girl stuff in. The character was strong enough that just changing it to a girl was not. There was not I had to rearrange the best friend and I had to do some mechanical stuff around it, but to her character, there was no change. And I think that's what made that character so strong, that I wasn't writing to a gender, I was writing to a character. And at that time, as Mitchell said earlier, when you wrote, we were all writing to gender, because depending on how good your show was how much space you had in Toys R Us. That was the indicator. If you had 20 linear feet, you were Hot Wheels or Power Rangers. If you weren't there, you were getting canceled. And it was literally that.
If I could say something about that, because
that was the origin of that.
My point of view on Clarissa, and because the big thing is, will it appeal to boys? And I said, look, kids appeal to kids. Why wouldn't a boy appeal to a girl, or a girl to a boy, unless they're doing things that are so girly or so, only boys, that there's no room for them to be involved with or to be involved. On Clarissa, I was so adamant that it worked, that original opening to Clarissa, where she's in a monster costume and then a ballet, and then I really wanted to cover all this territory, and even the blue and pink was to cover all this territory. But at one point, she's in a basketball uniform and she's bouncing a basketball, dribbling, and she's shooting. And Melissa, unfortunately, couldn't do that. She just couldn't, look like a decent basketball player. And I knew if I let that shot in there the way it was, a boy would look at it and go like, "Oh, she's a girl that bounces a basketball. Like, I'm not going to watch this show." Right. And instead, what I did is I jump cut it in a way that you didn't quite know. Right. And I always try to make sure that I never alienated either side, And that's what Tommy's saying is a really common sense thing that people didn't do and still sometimes don't do, which is letting a character be a person, a kid, and not so identifying them in some way that's so literal that it becomes, it's not as interesting.
So Mitchell, you did something that was unique. And I was wondering how hard you had to sell it. When she broke the 4th wall, like when she spoke to the audience, right? Did you have to fight for that? Did you have to explain what that was? Or did you just put it in and say, "Yeah, isn't that great"?
I definitely put it in. And I definitely put it in. And then there was this endless discussion of who's she talking to? What's going on there? What's going on? Is she talking to someone? Is she talking to her friend? Is she talking to, her imaginary friend? What is it? Her therapist?
right. Right.
Like,
It was brilliant. It was right. That's his New York the therapist. But it was brilliant, and now people do it. Now it's become almost a genre of breaking the fourth wall. It's now a device that multiple shows use. But back then, to do anything that was a little bit different, because the whole network was different, and the whole network could have collapsed with any show. I always had the sense that, man, one bad mistake and the whole place folds up. And to do that was really like, I saw that, I went, oh, that's
well,
so
and I
good.
also did it in a particular way that I've always been proud of, which is that it's not like Our Town where it's like, well, now you should see they're doing this. It was never like that. In fact, it was always casual. And I had worked at Comedy Central. I think it was called, is it called Comedy Channel? Whichever one it was.
It was Comedy Central. I think it was called Comedy Central.
It was Ha.
Was it
Before
Ha at the
Ha.
time?
There were two of them. I worked at,
Yeah.
but Comedy Central, I had produced a show with Higgins Boys and Gruber. They went on to run Saturday Night Live. I mean, the Higgins Boys, and with Rachel Sweet, who is this rock and roll star. And a lot of the ideas in Clarissa came from those two shows. And what it was is that they had to do this ridiculous format of post stand-up comedy bits for 3 hours. And we did these very ingenious little segments that I later on would edit together. And you'd have these guys acting like a host, but doing a sitcom with each other. And in a way, they were a host to their own show, their own sitcom. And so that kind of thing. And then Rachel was also a host. So I really liked the idea that you weren't breaking the fourth wall. You were given the news. This is the news on my life. We're giving the news right on us, as opposed to breaking the fourth wall.
It was a great storytelling device because it kept me as a viewer engaged. Like, oh, wow. Because it was always about something like, can you believe this is happening? Like, no, I can't. And then you would go on. It was really of the moment. I think I might have actually stolen on a pilot I turned into Disney. They passed on it last week, but I think I might have stolen that subconsciously.
You can do it consciously at this point.
Thank you.
Well, it's an interesting mechanism for storytelling to get the audience engaged, because I'm trying to think if Clarissa ever addressed the audiences like you, or, it's not like she was never talking down to the audience. She was very much a news reporter from the beginning. And it makes sense that she would go on to have an interest in journalism because that's how she led her life. But yeah, it would be interesting to get those little insights, and it was almost like she was talking to her friends. So she was inviting the kids to experience her life with her. And then you get little glimpses into her imagination with like the fantasy sequences and stuff. And I think that the storytelling, the device of talking to the audience sort of opened a lot of creative doors there that allowed you to do more.
Now we all do it, right? We all pick up our phone. We talk, oh yeah, hi. Oh yeah, I'm here. Give me have a donut or two. Yeah, I'm with it's always it's always happening.
Before we go into the personalities of both these characters, what was the casting process like for both of you?
No, there's a funny, I have to say, there's a little caveat here before we go, just a tiny, tiny one. I've been interviewed a bunch of times where people say, oh, so were you involved with the show? Like when you sold the show to Nickelodeon, did you get to work on it? And did you ever get to see the scripts? And I know that sounds so absurd, especially to Tommy too, right? But it's actually happens now. People actually don't know. And that's so funny in a way, right? It's shocking.
Yeah, it's hysterical, right? That the question would even exist, because when Mitchell and I took massive ownership of what we were doing, and all of our shows subsequently, they were a Mitchell Kriegman show. They were a Tommy Lynch show. They're not an NBC show. They're not that. That is not how, for good and bad, I find, for me, for good and bad, that's just what it is. We have absolute authorship on our shows. And back then, we had a voice to say, no, we're not doing that. This is what we're doing. And I think it was Jerry's text. I mean, we'd have to sell them on it or tell them it was the right one. But today, I've been to casting sessions with Disney where it's like, yeah, this is what castings decided. Well, they don't have to live with this 18 hours a day. They're not, but yeah, so it is a funny question. It is funny. So my casting story was really simple in that I was petrified. I saw 800 kids, and I knew that if I didn't have the right kid, it was not going to work. I just knew it. And you don't know what that is. Larissa Olenek, who plays Alex, walked into the room. She had done only a Les Mis in a San Francisco theater group, right? This very solid kid. I got what we used to call I call them Crest TV kids. They would all come in and smile and they'd sing Annie's Tomorrow. Well, I wasn't even asking for anyone to, but they would sing, they had to show it. And you're like, okay, which was the antithesis of what Mitchell and I were both doing. We wanted real kids, real world, all that. So it was hard to find that kid. And she came in, normal family, normal everything. It wasn't her 8th audition of the day. And she walked in and I just said, that's her. And it was totally intuitive. The resume, but she so commanded that role. And I've said often that show, she understood that character better than I did. She added something to it that I didn't see, which was this humanity and this heart and this warmth to it that I did not see. So for me, it was painful until I saw her, and then they signed off on her.
Clarissa, so I saw a lot of people, not maybe as much as you. I actually asked, I guess, and they said yes to me having my own casting director, because I really didn't want some quote Nick kid actor, some somebody that does commercials like you say and sings Annie. I mean, that's just terrifying. And that's really what was out there. And there was more of that out there then than there is now. There are kids who grow up acting in natural ways now. And we've seen so many great young actors now, so many. There were hardly any. I mean, even someone like Michael J. Fox was very rehearsed, very strong. He was a great actor within that, but that's the way they came, So on our feeding level, which was not, network, we weren't going to see even those kinds of people. We were going to see some kid that they just threw out, right? So I got a casting director that I knew that was used to doing theater and stuff like that. And I was really looking for somebody fresh. But on the other hand, I knew I had, like your show, Tommy, I had a show where Clarissa was in every scene of every episode. And she actually had more lines than anybody combined. I mean, it was insane. And I knew that if she wasn't the next best thing, I had very little chance of success. That's why I always felt, completely beholden to her and what she brought to the part. And so I saw a bunch of people, and there were two, and this is a story that I've told before, and Melissa tells the story as well. First Melissa came in, and she had done acting on stage. She was the unusual character that had a great low-key freshness, and she had skills. She did have enormous skills, right? But they didn't show. They weren't showy. They weren't artificial skills. She had skills that were amazing in terms of being able to no dialogue and say stuff that even she didn't understand. She could do and seem like she was real. The other thing that was the essential thing about her is she lightened up the screen. I mean, when Melissa came on the screen and you watched her audition, you were like, oh, there's something light here. There's something soft and wonderful. And I could listen to her and her voice forever, There was another girl, because Melissa wasn't really Clarissa. And if you're coming from the school of, I better cast Clarissa, the girl that's most like Clarissa, you would have cast this other girl that I also worshiped and thought was amazing. But the difference was that girl didn't have the ability to go every episode with every line and so much stuff that Melissa had to carry. And in a way, I realized that Melissa could become the character. And then the last thing I'll say is that lightening up the screen, which was the essential thing about her, is that she could take all the dark, crazy stuff that I wrote and all the things that I was a performance artist and all the weird ideas I had, and off the wall stuff, which at the time, if you look at that stuff out of context of Melissa Joan of Clarissa, you go like, oh yeah, like the cable behind you in the room, like these totally tripped out things that I was doing. That were literally like my straitjacket. When she wears the straitjacket,
Yeah.
that straitjacket has such a story from my life that it's really bizarre. And I used it for art and everything. So I took this entire strange, bizarre childhood and crazy stuff that I did, no nuclear explosions in the garage, and I brought it into this character. And what I discovered that blew me away was that when she said these lines that I used to say as a performance artist that were dark and heavy and whatever, people laughed. It was funny. It was goofy.
Right.
It was playful. So she made it all possible, that delivery.
Your trauma became America's comedy.
That's
Fantastic.
right. And I got paid.
Fantastic.
I got paid.
He's paid to it.
I went home with a check.
My God.
Oh, that's
That's
awesome.
did Clarissa, I often say that Larissa elevated my material. She elevated, she made it better than it was. Would you, when you were with Clarissa, did she fold into you and go with your ideas and make them, or did she take your ideas and add to them? Like, what, or was it a
Well,
combo?
I would say it was more mutual, especially because Melissa, when she grew up, she was a Long Island girl. And she didn't really know who Freud was, and all these quotes that we were quoting, all this. And at one point this is not a knock on Melissa, because Melissa could say these quotes from Freud and
They were hysterical.
Stalin
They were
and
hysterical.
Marx.
Whether they were true or not, I'd go, is that true? Because it should
Yeah.
be.
But she could do them as if she knew what she was talking about. She just did
Right.
them, and you said, "Oh, okay."
Right.
But she got stuck on one because it was about the guy in Tibet, the Dalai Lama, and
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. She kept on this quote. She got stuck on this quote from the Dalai Lama one time, and she knows this is a humorous story, and she said, "Oh, the Dalai Lama of Tibet." And she'd go, blah, 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 blah. And we'd say, no, do that again. The Dalai Lama of Tibet. I said, what are you saying? Tibet? What is Tibet? What are you talking about? It says right here, Tibet. And it was Tibet, right? But she had no idea what Tibet was, you can't blame her, right? But she was so confident and she was so good. Maybe they should change the name to Tibet, because Melissa seemed to say it as if it was true.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Say anything with confidence and people start to believe you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's going to argue with a 14-year-old girl who knows how to say Tibet?
Nobody.
Quote, Dalai Lama. She could say Dalai Lama. So, anyway, we did get her to say Tibet, but
That's awesome.
she was amazing.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, let's dive into the characters themselves. We'll start with Clarissa. Tell us about the personality. What were you looking for specifically in the personality for Clarissa?
The character was very defined. I really wanted a kid who had, interesting ideas, who had sensitivity to other people, boys and girls, who was better than the game. Because I had this theory that a 14-year-old girl, especially at that time, knew more about how to be a person than people older and younger did. That she's in that pocket where they knew even from a female perspective, the makeup better than the one that got to be 16 and 18, where they don't know what's going on, right? But a 14-year-old girl has this incredible awareness. And I wanted someone who was confident. I didn't want, and this became a big story for me when I went to do reboots and when I went to do other shows, because they didn't all want to have a girl that was confident. They kept on, oh, why is she so confident? That used to be a huge struggle. Why is she so perfect? Doesn't she worry? Isn't she worried about, what she's going through, hormonally? Why isn't she, more upset about everything? Why is she just so got it together? And I said, no, this is the idea. Why can't a kid have it together? And no, kids more than at 14 at that time were so together, unless they were, you know, a model in Vogue and then they were in some crazy world. But so yeah, I was looking for someone, and also someone who could have a plan and not be shaken when the plan went south. She's Bugs Bunny to me. She was
Yes.
always Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny always, Bugs Bunny never loses. There's only one episode where Bugs Bunny loses, and I won't go into it now, but Bugs Bunny never loses. And the idea really was, and then people would say, well, if she never loses, how will we identify with her? Well, because even when you never lose, you lose until you never lose. I mean, you know, you have to keep trying. If your plan doesn't work, you have another plan, and that's what you identify with. Of course, she loses, but each time in the end, she doesn't, because that was the nature of who she was. I wanted a kid that was better than the game. You know, I wanted a kid that was the ideal of what you could be.
I was just going to say that she creates the game, and she literally makes her own computer games and gamifies everything to solve problems. So her confidence and her strong sense of self, I think, were pivotal.
No, just quickly, that you'd be
she-
surprised at how much that got attacked. Like
Wow.
just like how she could talk back to her mother and father. How could she be so feisty? How could she, you know, not doubt what she's doing? You know, how can she be so clear that way? People would say, you know, all sorts of stuff about it.
Wow.
Was that in your version of the show or in the reboot? Like in the Nick show, people were getting notes and letters on why can't you? It's amazing to me because her voice was so clear. It never felt like talking back. It felt like questioning the status quo.
Yes.
Which I thought was really an intellectual, really good way to go with it. And I never felt it rude. I never felt it inappropriate, but I felt, there's a thing in kids television, which is the dumb parent. And even though every network says they don't want them, they really do want them. Mitchell might have started that. Okay. He might have just started that whole trend.
No, actually, I have to say in their defense, when they did the testing on Clarissa, their conclusions, they were very good on testing in those days. I don't know what you felt about it, Tommy. I felt they were really smart in those days about the testing.
When they agreed with me, they were right. When they did, I said it was flawed. Very simple. See,
I probably felt
way more thoughtful than me.
I probably felt the same way and argued. But the big thing that I got out of the testing was they said the parents in the original pilot were paper thin and they weren't strong enough. And they said, and this was a message to me that I took very seriously, that kids don't want a pushover parent. They want one that first of all, you want to feel like your parent's there and they're not going to desert you. And secondly, if you're going to you're going to go against them and work with them, then you want to have somebody you can really spar with, somebody worthwhile.
Yeah.
And
the term was safety. It was like, are they safe in that environment? Right. So they had to have enough brains going on to do that.
Right.
So
so I felt like that was a good note that I learned from that kids, and that was a good note for Nickelodeon in general, because you don't just want, kids can do anything they want to do. It's all kids. Right. You really want to be in a universe that's safe,
Right.
I think Janet and Marshall were very supportive of Clarissa, and they were hippies and free thinkers themselves and a little off, and it made sense that they would raise her to allow her to question even them, and think of new ideas, and she went to them for advice. So there was a safety to that family unit.
Right. As opposed to Ferguson, which was just a bizarre creature from outer space.
And we'll get to the family life in just a bit, but I do want to go back to what you were saying earlier about Clarissa being like Bugs Bunny. We had actually had the opportunity to interview Alan Goodman previously in the series, and we were asking him what it was like whenever he became was hired on as writer, and he said something to the effect of he was reading one of the scripts or watching an episode or something to that, and he was asked, what do you think of the show? And he said, I see Clarissa as like Bugs Bunny, and I see Ferguson as Daffy Duck, and then he said that Mitchell told me I knew I liked you for a reason, or something to that effect.
This day. But I remember my job interview with Mitchell. He took me to lunch. We had known each other for a long while. He was a fixture on the New York new media scene. I certainly knew of Clarissa. He would occasionally, I owned an advertising agency. It was MTV and Nickelodeon's advertising agency with my partner. And I would sometimes hire Mitchell to come in and freelance with us just because he was really, really funny and we always had a great time together. And so he kind of returned the favor. I was at the time producing Hanging with MTV, MTV's first live daily show, which predated TRL. It ultimately morphed into TRL. So I'd come up with that and I was producing it. And he wanted to talk to me about taking over Clarissa. So we went to lunch and he asked me, what do you see as sort of the difference between the Clarissa character and the Ferguson character? And I said, well, to me, Clarissa is kind of like Bugs Bunny. Bugs just wants to lie on his bed in his rabbit hole, reading a book, eating a carrot. Whereas Ferguson is more like Daffy Duck, who's constantly yelling, look at me, what about me? How about me? Pay attention to me. And he smiled and he said, I knew I wanted to hire you.
But the second you said that, I was like, yeah, it tracks with what Alan had said.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love all this stuff. Tom, tell
You
us
had to be
about
prompted on that. Yes, I'll take that. What's the about her character?
yeah, tell us about her personality.
It's Mitchell and I. It's the exact opposite. Mine was a girl who didn't fit in. She didn't know she wanted to fit in. She wanted to be part of, but just didn't. She was at that age. I think when we started Alex, she was 12. I think we played her as a 12-year-old. And she was at that time where everything was awkward, everything was uncomfortable. The opening sequence of her getting dressed and putting on different outfits and the discovery of the hat was more so she could hide a little bit, but also try to be cool. You know, there was that kind of thought going into it. And what the inciting incident of the whole series was, you have this girl her sister's a brilliant student and off to college. Her dad is her dad and her sister get along really well because they're both scientists. The mom was a very modern mom, like I think real estate. So she was out of the house a lot, loving and kind, but you know, I didn't want to do that perfect family where there was no problem. Like, no, these people had to go to work and they were like a normal family. And so she was alone a lot and she lived in a world that was so specifically picked because everything looked the same. It was one of those housing developments, Mitchell, where every house, every street looked the same. And she stood out in her whole world. She just stood out. She did not feel connected to anything. So when the incident happened and she got hit with the GC-161 and discovered these powers, it was like that great idea of, oh, I am special, but I can't tell anybody. So that was kind of what drove the engine for her and all of her things that going on. But it was really about, you know, it was the kid with pimples at 12 that kind of embarrassed of himself. The kid that didn't have the right lunch, the kid that didn't have the right clothes to go to school. Not that there was poverty or any of that, just my theory is no kid ever feels comfortable. They just don't. They're always an outsider. Even if they're the jock, they feel like an outsider. Well, I don't know if that's my theory, but that's the only story I've ever written. See, I found one story, just wrote it 1,000 times. Mitchell has a lot of stories. I do the same one. And one of these days I'll get it right. But she was really about being an outsider in her own world and how to deal with that. And then she got this great gift or curse or whatever, and she can't tell anybody.
Yeah, I mean, just the name of her town, Paradise Valley. She's living in Paradise Valley, run by a corporation where everything's the same. And I think that gaining powers, it was definitely, it was a catalyst. I see it as a catalyst to boost her confidence and sense of self as she's trying to figure out the awkward, like 12-year-old tween years. So,
The Paradise Valley thing was very, very specific in that I'd always thought, for good storytelling, the world looks perfect, but underneath it, it's not. And that was that kind of, again, as I was trying to do something cinematic, all of those visual images elevated the scripts that we were writing, because, oh, she's not just a kid walking down the street of every town. She's in a very specific pre-planned place. She's in a very specific modern school where everybody's on track to get the scholarship to go intern at the lab where everybody works. It was almost Soylent Green in a sense. So it was, but in a kid world of it all. Yeah.
Cool.
It's all therapy for both Mitchell and I. I think that's our commonality.
I mean, writing is therapeutic. Yeah.
There's definitely overlap in all these ideas, by the way. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the ideas that and approaches, because you're taking different approaches with a character versus a family versus a community, and how they, create their identity. Because, to some degree, at one point, I used to pitch Clarissa as being totally original and different, and that cool, weird girl. And there was a sense that, oh no, those girls never succeed. They're always the ones that are depressed, and you don't, so there was also a kind of aspirational fantasy that you could be so different and weird, dressed the way you want it, because she totally dressed in her own completely way, a new way, which was not a norm at the time, which is
But
amazing.
she had confidence in doing it. She was very confident in doing it. Larissa was very kind of, does this work?
No, it's a different
It
approach.
was,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, Clarissa was bold colors and earrings and everything, and Alex was more of like the tomboy, trying to, like you said, trying to blend in, trying to fit in, and hiding under the hat.
Yeah, so there's always you have to deal with those dynamics in every show, and how you choose is what makes that show,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was actually going to touch a little bit onto the fashion of the two of them,
Yeah.
but we did get a bit of the tomboy and the hat for Alex Mack and why she looked the way that she did. What was the intentional fashion choices for Clarissa?
I just had the idea that she dressed any way she wanted to. And I had met some of the women in, Diane Keaton was a big deal. She kind of did that mixture of ways to look. And I wanted her to be just like her bedroom. I wanted her to be completely self-created, making up her own decisions about everything. Like, oh yeah, I mean, the room that you're in right now is the way that set got designed was that I asked the set designer for Nickelodeon. There was a standard guy, Byron. I don't know if you remember him, Tommy, Byron Taylor. I said, they asked, what kind of bedroom do you want for Clarissa? I said, make just a perfectly normal girl's bedroom. So they did that. And I said, okay, now I want to paint these black patches across this checkerboard. And one of the cameramen said, I want you to, screw this up over here and do this. And one of the cameramen said, what, is she possessed by the devil? I mean, what's going on here? And in terms of her clothes, I wanted her to just, invent it and do what she felt expressed her. And I think that she could go into her closet and now, of course, having that idea and doing that idea are two different things. Because I happen to have found the most amazing costume designer when I did the show. And this was a big kind of brouhaha briefly at Nickelodeon, because I got this woman, Lisa Lederer, who was like my muse, actually, for her. And really the person I went to most when I was, not sure about something in terms of the character and stuff. And Lisa had a nose ring, which in those days was like, only in islands in the
Avant-garde. Yes.
Did you have a nose ring, And everybody was like, oh my God, he hired a costume designer with a nose ring. And she invented her look. Really, I gave the idea of it being totally, what she wants, to go into her closet and pick what she wants. But, that could be good or it could be junk, and the designs were really amazing because Lisa figured out what a girl could choose, where she could choose it, how she could do it, what was accessible to her, how to put it together to make it amazing,
It's interesting about your wardrobe because Laura Slakey was our person, our version of that. And she really was the same thing. I would find myself sitting in the wardrobe room going, I don't know about this story. I don't know about this. It was a comfortable place to talk, right? It was because
Right.
it wasn't a bunch of writers. It wasn't a director. It wasn't the producers, everybody on you. You could go sit there. And there was something in a later
He
project
was
I did.
sympathetic, enormously sympathetic to the
Yeah, and I
character.
didn't understand it until later years. I did a movie with Gregory Hines that he directed, and we were setting up to do the movie, and he was starring in it, and he walked around he said, I want to go to the wardrobe room, and he walked around and he looked for something. He said, I always have to have something that makes me feel the character. And he picked a long coat. That was it, just a simple coat. But that connection of wardrobe to actor to ultimately what we write is necessary. Like it's really it showed me the importance. What was obvious to me, which I don't see anything obvious, but that exhibited the importance of it to me. So it's cool we have the same experience. I can imagine when Mitchell painted that black on, 8 people called up and kept going to higher up the food chain and said, he's got black on the set. Oh my God. Because these people wanted the world to look like a bubblegum machine, right? I'd always get to know, can it be brighter? No, no. And there's one flaw in Alex Mack in the pilot. There's only one flaw. And that is if you look at the fire hydrant that the truck paints, that the truck hits and it blows up and mixes the GC161 and it hits her, that is unnaturally gold. And the reason was I wanted every house in the neighborhood to be painted like from Tim Burton, from Edward Scissorhands. I wanted it to be surreal like that. Well, apparently I only had the budget for the fire hydrant. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what I wanted to do. It's like, so the fire hydrant's there. It was it's always the thing of me like, God, what if I would have made a mistake if I did that to the whole to every house on the block, but that's what it was.
But you know, I
So-
have my one flaw in the first episode, which is that lighting was not their forte. And I shot in a studio, right?
Right,
And
right. But
lighting-
they would go hot and flat.
Yeah. And there was a great guy, but that's what his mandate was, you know. And so they, you know, blew out the set. You know, we didn't have, you know, budgets for a sitcom were 800,000 to $1 million even back then. And I think mine was 150,000, you know, 200 or something like that. So, I mean, I made like when what's the Mayan Blossom was being made, it was being made for, you know, millions, and we were doing it for 150, 200,000. And anyway, so the way it was lit and everything, you could see the floor through Clarissa's window, the studio floor through Clarissa's window. And because, you know, basically it's on the floor and Sam has a tiny ladder this big that he hides and he goes, "Rah," and then he pretends to climb up, right, and go into a room. And you could see through the window and see the gray studio floor. And I called up, you know, Herb Scannell at the time and said, listen, you know, could we redo this, or are you willing to live with the studio floor? He says, the studio floor is fine. So it's
Let's transition over to the family units. For Clarissa, what were you looking for with each member of the family unit?
right. Well, first of all, I wanted this crazy sort of funny, eccentric dad, which obviously in the actor was a real comedian. Joe was you know, pretty successful comedic actor at that time. And I wanted a and really friendly and accessible dad. I wanted totally, by the way, all these characters are completely 180 degrees antithetical to my upbringing. I had none of these kind of people in my life. People have said, oh, you must have had a wonderful family. I said, no, I actually had a horrible family that was not supportive and not nice and really abusive, but it gave me a lot of time to think about what a wonderful family might be. And so literally I created what I really wished I had, you know, and not just like perfect, but sort of, you know, workable and everything. Anyway, so the dad was that. And then the mom, I just thought mom should be kind of sexy a little bit, you know? And I know maybe that sounds wrong or something. I'm not sure what politically correct is right now on this, but I felt like she should be attractive. It wasn't really about sex, but I thought she should have that feeling that she's a vibrant woman who's, not some, woman that's, just a mom and not involved with the world, right? So, and she was an excellent actor, Elizabeth Hess, and she knows. I really said, I really want you to feel like you're a vibrant woman. Then I wanted, like, Ferguson was the Antichrist as far as I was concerned. And
Yes.
and poor kid, and he was Michael J. Fox. He was Michael J. Fox in that show. He was the guy he's what I call a hard character. And by hard, I mean, this is maybe my terminology. I don't know if you do this, Tommy, but I always want a character that I can know every time you cut to them, they're going to say something that you can get, and it'll be funny, and it'll be, you can depend on them, and it helped the show. It makes it easier to write, and it became the perfect contrast. And, the funniest thing was in those days, and you think about what people think about now, sibling rivalry was like, oh my God, you're not going to deal with sibling rivalry, are you? Like that was a hot rail. No joke. I know it sounds utterly ridiculous, but there was a lot of discussion. Like, obviously, the first episode, she says she's going to kill her brother, and you don't get to do that anymore. But because no one would ever.
Did she really say that?
Yeah.
Oh, did she say
first
that?
episode is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there was a few episodes they got the word hell in there.
Yeah.
You can't do that either.
The opening line is that, this is my, my hated brother, Bergface, and
Right.
today he dies. Today he dies.
But it doesn't matter anymore. Because after today, he dies.
And the episode was all about, in a very goofy way, getting him to float away and disappear and be off and be away,
Put him in a
But-
straitjacket
hysterical.
and hook
Put him in
some
a
balloons to
straitjacket.
him, and
the family
more
straitjacket.
Ferguson.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Because every family has one.
so the thing about it, though, was that sibling rivalry was a meaty thing. And in those days, because people always tamped down the idea in those days. Now you can't do it anymore that way. But the idea that kids could hate each other, and that was not okay. Just like the bully episode, that a girl could fight a boy. Oh no, that never would happen. I mean, all those conventional
Genius.
that those
Right.
days were provocative things, in those days for the character. And sibling
Do you think we
rivalry.
got away with all this, Mitchell, because we weren't watched as much? Like, and these numbers sound huge today. Like, Mitchell, at the beginning year, when you first started Clarissa, 1 million people would have been a huge number, right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah,
and then
I
it
don't
probably,
know.
And then I
Yeah.
think it built up to like 4 million as Nickelodeon built up. 4 million was like, I know the peak of Alex was 4 or 5 million. Now I heard a note that Nickelodeon, one of their hit shows, gets 200,000 viewers. Like it's reductive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, listen,
so-
I always went to places that might be less viewed or smaller venues because they do what I want to do. I always
Yeah,
feel
that
like
was the freedom.
the freedom, and then what you do is really good. It'll get to more people eventually.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the audience in terms of what it eventually reached, time, it's a bigger deal. So yes, the family unit at that time was the idea that there was this quirky family that, ex-hippies and all these other ideas, and there were these big contrasts and big, they said what they thought, but they were still with each other and loved each other, and but they didn't do those wet moments. That's the other thing. The Norman Lear school that I was not part of was that what they call the wet moment, where after Ferguson and Clarissa argue, Ferguson comes in or Clarissa comes in and says, "No, I really do love you, Ferguson.
Right.
I really,
Yeah.
Right.
oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't do that." We never did that. I would
Right.
never touch that,
Yeah.
So you were
Life-
Seinfeld before Larry David.
There we go.
That was
I
just,
mean-
you were it.
Families and life are messy and weird, and I think that it's cool that you got to be a little more like quote unquote, I'm just gonna say subversive, I guess, because Nickelodeon at the time I think was like trying to maybe be the anti-Disney, and they didn't want to have all those, oh, we all love each other, everything's cookie cutter perfect. We got to see the mess. Like Nickelodeon is like, you know, their logo and the slime, it's messy, and it
Right.
felt more real to
Yeah.
kids, I think.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. And that was really what it was, a gift between the ad people who were pretty good and Jerry. It's really what the gift they gave kids that may never quite happen again, I have to say, because it really opened up this space for kids to be kids and for to have authentic shows for kids and not training shows or sugary shows or wanting to be a star shows. Or Clarissa was never, not like the shows that came like and your shows didn't do this, your shows were this way too, Tommy. Like, you know, eventually at Disney they were all, I want to be a star, I'm going to be a star, oh, my life
Right.
as a star is so
Yeah.
difficult,
Right.
I can't
Hannah
identify.
Montana.
It's not
Right.
interesting, and you know how she felt about it, you know, Miley Cyrus felt about it, you know, and you know, the kids won't understand, won't identify it. They won't want to watch them if they're not going to be a star or they're a star or something. And my
Right.
attitude was, Clarissa wants to be a star in her own life, not to
Mhm.
be a star
Yeah.
in the world. And your stuff is this way too, Tommy. That's
Yeah.
that to me is the genuineness of a kid character. The whole star thing is, it's such an American travesty. I
Well,
think.
it fed the machine. It fed the
Mhm.
Disney machine, the merchandising and the all that stuff. But I think it's interesting. I never heard that term wet moment, but my wet moments were always about self-discovery. It wasn't about someone else. It was about, in the show, it was about um one of my favorite episodes of all time was the Christmas episode. And it was one where Christmas was 110 degrees. Right, because of where we were. And she had to work in a Christmas tree lot. She was working in the Christmas tree lot, and we did that. And somehow she ends up going on an adventure and blah, 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 blah. And she's fighting with her family. She's fighting with her sister, her mother. Nobody has time. Everybody's rushing around at Christmas. Because I remember Christmas to me was always a time of just people rushing around. There's no community to it. Everybody's running. And I'm unsure what that second act turn was, but the end of it was that everybody was behind on Christmas and fading out and asleep. And she wakes up late in the middle of the night and she decorates the tree with her power. Like you
Yep.
just see the things floating. And I brought in a boys' choir. My son was in a boys' choir. And I brought it. Mitchell knows my religious affiliations run deep. They're panicked and deep and torturous, but they're there. So we had this choir that was it was kind of a takeoff of the Charlie Brown, that they would do it. And it was so fun because she felt in that moment the Christmas thing of what is being for me was being family. That's all that was. And none of the family was there, but she felt it. And then the blow to it all, Mitchell, was the next morning she falls asleep and she wakes up. Merry Christmas. It's 112 degrees today. Great day for our holiday.
That's a great piece.
That was a really fun. I always directed the Christmas episodes and wrote those and did that. I just love doing that. It was because,
How many episodes did
Mitchell,
you write? How many? I know you rewrote every episode. You probably,
I probably wrote in the first season. Were we getting 20 episode orders in those days? I think, or something like. I think there were 20 episodes. I probably wrote 5 or 6, and then as it went on, I actually wrote less because I was doing some other shows simultaneously. But where they all had to report into me was, what's the story? What's the story? What's the story? And then I would go to the that was the first season I probably wrote the most. And I have to give props to Ken Lippman, who co-created the show with me, because it was my show and it was my idea and all that stuff, but I wasn't as sculpted a writer at that time. And he was a playwright. And so from that, I understood visually, I had no problem. I knew exactly I approached things from a visual perspective, but he really kind of guided me on and educated me on, just turns and character and stuff. And then year 2, a gentleman named Matt Dearborn came and joined us, who was a better writer than both of us. You know, he was just a really great writer. And then by that time, that show hit its level that I often said I could give. It doesn't matter what Larissa does; she's so strong. I mean, obviously it did matter, but she was so strong. So, yeah. How many did you write? Did you write them all?
No. In the first season, I wrote a lot, but what I
Right.
did do, I wrote maybe, I don't know, more than 5, more than 6. I had one writer, a brilliant writer, Alexa Young, who went on to write, Friends and create shows. Amazing woman, poor girl. She was like really stretched. It was just me and her. And then Nina Bieber came in, and then we started having more writers. But I did always true up the dialogue, and there was a phrase that people would use in those days. That, the script, every script went through my typewriter or my computer. Got it. That I always made sure, and I had to make sure things like the way they talk to camera. There were a lot of quirky. Clarissa's actually a super quirky writing show. And the formula works between talking to the camera and the fantasies. It can't become narration. There are a lot of pitfalls in the structure if you don't really know. Like, the last thing you want it to become is narrating something that happened. That never happened. It almost, I mean, sometimes there's flashbacks and things that happened in the past, but everything is forward moving, and you don't know what's going to happen at the end. So if you ever lose that, you lose the fun of the series. And if talking to the
Yeah, I would
camera,
call that the way you write, I call that jazz, because it all makes sense eventually. It doesn't make sense in its construction. So you had a rhythm that only the creator can understand. When people come in, yeah, I'll just knock some of these out. Good luck. Because
a lot of people had said, "Oh, it's a girl show." That's what they said. It's a girl show. I'm going to write girl
Yeah.
stories, and it's a girl show.
Yeah.
But it's not just a girl show.
That would
it's
be but that would be the last thing in your idea. When you pitch your ideas, the last thing you would think about is, what would a girl do? You're not thinking that. You're thinking, what does this universe do? What does Clarissa do? It's yeah. It's interesting. As time has gone on, I find that I write more of my shows now because it's a way for me not to talk to people. I'm writing. I had my son on the last one, and he literally ran the floor. I was upstairs. I'm writing. Leave me alone. Here's something people don't get. When Mitchell says, went through his typewriter, it was more than that, because with young actors, you write. As we all try to write. We write for Meryl Streep, Robert De Niro, Jim Carrey. We're writing for our idols. When we get our actors, no matter how good they are, they don't have all those tricks. They have one or two. And I don't know, Mitchell, I find I'm always rewriting to the strengths of what my young actors can do. And it's a constant. I may want this person to be Jim Carrey in a physical comedy, and they did one thing and it was in casting, and they can fall. All right, that kid's falling every time they open a locker. That's the only thing they can do. Or, as he said, we have that solid one. The locker, he falls at the locker. I'm doing that 20 times because it works next. But you can't. It's a tricky thing in program, and when you're working with young actors, because they don't. I used to do this thing, Mitchell. I don't know if you did it. Any scene that came in, and ours were single space. Yours are double space. So any scene longer than 3 pages, I'd cut. I would just cut the scene down. And some writer came to me once. That would be 6 pages, and you're in a multi-camera, right? And a writer came to me once and said, "You can't cut this." I go, "Listen, buddy, this scene works if I've got Meryl Streep. I don't. I have this kid who's done one Apple commercial, and I want him to get him a point A to point B and not show that she can't act." Okay? I mean, that wasn't Larissa, but got it. And it stayed with me that keeping that pace hid a lot of sins, if you will. It kept that egg being on them.
My idea to begin with was short scenes, because I hated sitcoms. I hated the classic Norman Lear, Mary Tyler Moore sitcom. I wanted to shoot myself whenever I watched one, because the structure was like a play, and everybody was like, they're so rigidly doing this, and they walk across the set to talk to somebody over here, and nothing ever happened, right? They had full scenes and they went to the next scene and the next scene. They didn't jump time. They didn't jump into a funny situation. There was no juxtaposition. There was no absurdity. And I couldn't stand that. So my whole goal, as much as any other goal I had in Clarissa, was to pick up the pace, everybody. Let's do some funny stuff. Let's do something where she starts in this situation. Next thing you know, she's tied up in her room. You know, that's I wanted to freshen up the whole form. I couldn't, and that's why talking to the camera, making a list, having a fantasy, and short scenes. That's what I wanted. And also they were, is that a rainbow? It's a friggin' rainbow out there.
It
Seriously?
It is a rainbow.
It is.
Look at that. See, God has spoken, Mitchell. God loves you.
This is the land of this is the land of rainbows. I have to say, there's so many
Yeah,
rainbows.
Let me answer I'll do the parent side of the question, I guess, because that's it, because I've literally got 15 more minutes. So anyways, so with my parents, they were again the opposite of Mitchell. My family was, well, no, no, they're not the opposite. I was wrong. The dad was a scientist, was based in my dad, but the good version of my dad. That's not who my dad was. Right. And I
This
get
is a
balloons.
Zoom thing. No, this is a Zoom thing. I'm surprised. Like, have you had this? Like, haven't you had this?
I've had that happen to me before.
I love it.
No, it's the thing that comes up if you go like this in meetings. Sometimes
Really?
you get a
Do that
thumbs
again.
up.
Oh, I
You
love
can't.
that.
You won't be able to do it again.
So anyway,
Yeah,
so
rainbow
it was
and
the
balloons. What
fableized.
more do you want?
You got it. So he was the fableized. Daddy Mack was the fableized version of my father as a scientist. The mother, I was similar to Mitchell in that I wanted a real contemporary woman that was attractive and was a woman, and you know they would go off on a romantic night or they'd give each other looks and stuff. Never sexualized, but two people that were normal human beings. I wanted that in the environment, and that made Alex feel more of an outsider because she didn't understand at that age what her parents were doing. You know, dad always had a mission. Mom was in a hurry, as I said. And her sister and her dad got along really well because they do these stupid science jokes, like over making toast and stuff that nobody would know. Galileo wouldn't understand what they were saying, but it was like really quirky to them. So they liked it.
The periodic table of elements song. I remember that one.
Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen.
Exactly.
brilliant.
Exactly. It was like crazy.
That was brilliant.
Well, you know, music is in my soul. If you can drop a song in, I don't care if it's a death sequence, I'm putting a song in. So I tried to create kind of what a normalized family. And it was interesting because at that time, except for Mitchell shows, the parents were what I called entrance and exits. They'd walk in with something stupid, like the plumbing broke and he'd be soaked, right? Or the mom had come in and her hair went wrong. It was really kind of that, just a hard cut to get you somewhere else is what they were used for. And we stayed away from that.
Well, while we still got you just for a bit, we're going to transition to the friends. So tell us about Alex's friends and what you were looking for with that.
Well, I'm shamed because I love the description of Ferguson as the Antichrist. I did not. That is genius. That is genius. So Raymond Alvarado was a kid that we grew up with, the Alvarado family. We had 8 kids in my family, and they had 9. And we just all kind of paired up as families in real life. And that's where his name came from. And Raymond was the guy, what defined him best was, I don't want to be an A or B kid. They will watch you. C's, average, under the radar. I'm going to live my life. And that was really, to me, the defining of who he was. Like, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to fail. I just want to go unnoticed because then they won't find me. And she'd go like, who's they? Oh, they're there. It was that whole thing that goes on. And he was kind of philosophical about life in a very average, normal, obvious way. If there's anything complex, he would have the obvious answer to it. Mm-hmm. And then Tanya Ross, who played, I can't remember the name of the character she played, was one of my favorite characters because she was the goth kid in Paradise Valley. Robin. And Robin showed up as this, her alabaster skin, her red hair, and she just was, everything was dark. I think Daria was taken from her. Did Nina create Daria?
No, but she wrote on it. It was a comic book, I
Yeah.
think. Or
It was
yeah.
that a younger version of Daria that came after it. So it was just this idea of this dark kid living in all this bright light. So she always had sunglasses on, as I recall, because she was that world. And then Jessica Alba, year one, was the femme fatale, was the pretty girl who then that was everything Alex wanted to be. And I think our characters, they were always in support of a kid world of what is going to happen next. And it was important junior high school. Another thing with Raymond, I want to stay unnoticed. Junior high, next year, the big time, high school. Things get serious there. They start defining your life. Oh, then you got to go to college. Why? So you got to go get a job that you got to stay at for 25 years. And do you really want that job? I don't. Unnoticed. I'll be me. And that's how that was his vibe.
I love
And
that.
just love
I
that
love
about
that.
him. That was it was very, very cool. And I'm proud of them because they've gone on to do cool things. You know, they've all gone on to be good in their lives or good in their professions or whatever. It's been a rewarding thing to see. You know, so go Mitchell.
Yeah.
Talk about the Antichrist.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. You
Oh.
had a budget for Friends. I only had one. Okay. I had to have one friend. Okay. And later, even in later seasons, we could have a friend for a day or a moment. But you'll notice there wasn't anybody hanging around. I had plenty of ideas for friends, you know, especially friends. I had this girl named Jody that I wanted her to be her best friend. I had a girl named Elle who was her enemy. They're all up here. They never made the show. They're actually in my
Well-
novel. Most of them in my novel. When I did Things I Can't Explain. But I only had one. I think I did a good job with it. It was Sam. And Sam was a major stake in the ground. He was kind of the boy that I would do, you know, if I could have done a boy Clarissa, you know what I mean? He was um, a really great counterpart to her, dovetailed with her really well. I called him a tip of the iceberg comedy character because whenever Sam would come in, Clarissa would ask him something and he'd say, oh yeah, it's because my dad fell off the ladder and exploded the other, you know, there was always some little thing he would say, and then it would turn out that a huge thing happened, you know, so there were always that kind of stuff. But, you know, I did not have room for a bunch of friends but it was pretty meaningful to have a boy who was a friend and not a boyfriend. And that was really something that I wanted to show this idea. And then of course, I mean, look, I made hay with that one friend because the ladder, you know, the fact that he was so able to like just, and that came from not wanting to have him get to the door and say, ding dong, can I see Clarissa, miss, you know, and have to walk up the stairs and go up to see. Instead, I'm like, I got to get him in right away. The home base, you know, there's a lot of times there's a home base in a show of every kind. And the home base, like the living room in Seinfeld, right? The home base was her bedroom. So as far as I was concerned, the only entrance that mattered was her room. Everything else was ancillary, you know? And if he was a friend and they wanted to conspire and do something, I had to get him in that room right away. And so that's why that created a kind of safe familiarity. And many, you know, people have talked a lot about the pair as a gender, whatever, you know, equal kind of relationship and all that kind of stuff. But that's all. I only had a budget for one friend.
Okay, about the budget, Mitchell, about the budget. We had 400,000 an episode, right? Is what it costs to make our show, right?
Yeah.
They come to me, they say, we only have 200. I say, no problem. I'll go get the rest international. Give me the international rights. I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I was not going to say if they picked up a show, I was not going to say no. I literally mortgaged everything I had as I was trying to sell that. That was the bet that if this going to work or not.
See, this is the difference between Tommy's career and my career. Tommy, when he did that, said himself, and I never understood how you got there. That you just told me the origin story of Tommy Lynch, which is that he made that move from the very beginning to self-finance. I never did that. And so I didn't know how to do that. He hook by hook or crook figured out how to do it many, many times over. And the result is that I think he was able to do many more shows than I was, because it didn't stop him, and he understood, he learned, not maybe right away, the financing. I mean, our budget was 200, whatever, you know.
In those days of cable, if you could finance, if you could bring money to it, all of a sudden they liked your show better. It didn't have anything to do with the quality of the show. It had to do with they liked it better. And we did. And I learned that from doing rock concert. When I did rock and roll shows, we had to sell them all around the world. So you go, blah, blah, blah. But it was a, look, it brought as much pain as it did glory. Okay.
No, I know. It was not
Didn't
easy.
work.
Not easy, but I envied it. I would call you and say, how the
Thank
hell
you.
do you do this? Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a very famous executive, Brandon Tartikoff, long gone, but in the old days of network TV, he was one of the biggest programmers of NBC ever. Tartikoff. I think he was responsible. Wasn't he responsible for, you know, most of the hits?
Hill
on
Street Blues, Cosby, blah, 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 blah. He was the guy.
Oh,
he was the guy.
And he was a really classy, interesting guy. I had one meeting with him. I come into this meeting, I'll never forget. And as I walk in, he says, I hope, to me, he says, I hope you made millions of dollars on Clarissa. I said, really? He said, yeah, because we made the guys that did Saved by the Bell millionaires. and that show wasn't worth compared to Clarissa. And he was saying this as a admirer, right? That he really truly
he was saying it's a compliment to you and didn't realize the pain of it.
And then I said, my response was, well, I guess I'll just have to rest on my artistic merits. Because that's what
nice.
Can we talk about some what you believe to be standout episodes of your shows before you have to go?
Go, Mitchell.
Me? Oh,
you go.
No, there's so many episodes I love. I love the first episode. No TV was, I think, really, you know, I can watch that and not wince once. I mean, I really, you know, love how that moves through the story and everything about it. I love all the performances in it. I love Cool Dad, really was the epitome of some of the stuff. Almost the first 5 or 6 episodes. I have a belief about TV shows that it's your first 6 episodes. If they're really, really good, you could be handing in carpet samples after that, which you shouldn't. But it's people's entire idea of the show gets fermented in those first 6 episodes. So I was super, super, super demanding on those, and I loved all of them. They all served their purpose. Later on, there's some episodes that I love too, and but those early days captured all the energy, captured all the beliefs, captured this idea of a kid and her clothes and all this other stuff. So yeah, I adore all that, the first 6 episodes pretty much, but there's some others too.
I obviously I talked about the Christmas episode, which might have been season 2 or something. And I absolutely love that. Then I love Paradise Lost, the wrapping up of the series, which was Paradise Found and Paradise Lost, I think was the wrapping up. There's a 2-parter that we did.
That was a religious
so
episode.
Powerful to me. Yes, of course. The what was happening in those episodes were we knew Alex wasn't coming back. Clarissa wasn't coming back. We had a thing. I offered her. I constructed the biggest deal for a kid star at that time, so short of Macaulay Culkin and the movie guys, but for a TV person, the biggest deal that had TV movies with Hallmark at the time, which there were different kinds of movies in. It had a feature film development at Paramount. I put all these pieces together in a guarantee, and it was like, you know, it was a lot of money. And I took her to dinner, her manager, her mother, and we sat at dinner, and I said, look, I know I want to do another season. The world wants, it's really successful. Here's what we're laying out. And she looked at me, and she looked at her mom, and she looked at her manager, and she took my hand. She said, you know, Tommy, I just want to do it last year at high school. That's what I'm going to do. As sweet, as beautiful as possible. And I said, Okay. There's, as Mitchell knows this too, when a kid, we have a strange obligation. We're not hustling kids because they're still kids. She's 15, 16, wants to go to her prom. She actually said, well, I want to go to my prom. I said, I'll fly you to your prom. Don't worry about that. And she said, no, she won't do it. I said, okay. So then the president, I called the president of the network, said, she's not doing it. He says, I'm coming out. Oh, great. Because that always, nothing ever went wrong there. And so he comes out a couple of days, he sits in, he says, I'm going to go talk to her alone. Great. Something I never did. I never spoke to a kid alone. I always thought that was wrong. The power dynamic isn't equal. There needs to be a parent there or a guardian or somebody there. And he goes in, he comes out an hour later. I go, how'd it go? He goes, she's tough. She didn't say a word to me. Like for an hour,
Wow.
it was yeah, okay. It was and that was it. And that's where we wrapped it up. And Larissa and I, to this day, I love her dearly. She feels like part of my family. And she has said the same about me. And it was the right thing to do. So anyways, we knew Paradise, that was going to be the last season. So we got to write to it, which was a joy because you never get to write to your last season. You always get killed. And it was beautiful to do. And it was really meticulous and it was lovely. It was, it was full circle for me. And then, I don't know. I'm blurred on specifics other than that, I just don't recall them that much.
Well, so much happened in those last 2 episodes, that 2-parter. I was like, wait, is it only 2 parts? Because it was every line of dialogue, every scene had a purpose, and it was packed with action and empathy and everything that you wanted to see. And I'm glad that as kids we were allowed to see this story come to a close, because at the time I think there was a lot of changing of the guard maybe, and some shows that I liked weren't getting renewed but also didn't get closure for whatever reason.
And that says a lot about Tommy and says a lot about the network too, because we were doing serious kids programming. We weren't just doing some shows that we know the kids will sit in front of, like places that do that, or a cartoon that they'll watch in the car, right? We were doing shows that treated kids as full people who deserve authentic programming and shows. And that, I think, is one of the, there are many reasons why Jerry's network was successful, not just commercially, but creatively and spiritually for kids, because that was really the idea, not just a pablum. It was a real show.
I know you got to bail, both of you, I'm assuming. So before you guys bail, thank you again so much for taking this time. It means a lot to us, and truly an honor. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I got to tell you, to get Mitchell and I together is the only reason to live. All right, it's just it is so. You guys have no idea for 25 years now, Mitchell, how we have damned everybody, checked with us. That person's a criminal. We love them. They suck. I mean, we are like the 2 Muppets and the 2 guys. Waldorf
and Waldorf.
We're much more handsome and we're not as old, but I think we're that. And we have
an ongoing commentary. Yeah.
Yes, an ongoing commentary of kids television. And Mitchell, it is always a delight. And I do want to highlight this. Mitchell lives in Portugal. I live in Hawaii. So something about the water of kids television made us, I wanted to say retreat, made us step back where we can observe in a more global perspective instead of laying the sewage of it or the toxicity of it.
Wow.
I love you, Mitchell. And it's always good to see you, man. Always good to hang. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys a lot.
You guys.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to work.
So much.
It was really great to work with you.
Okay, well, since Tom and Mitchell had to go, which gave us a lot of wonderful stuff, we are going to take a quick break for a bit and check in with what else is going on with Splat Attack, and we'll be back in just a little bit, so stick around.
The secret world of Alex Mack will return in a moment.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of our very first character study. If you are enjoying this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell. If you are listening on a podcast app, please leave us a review. These very simple actions on your part help others find the slime-filled past. If you enjoy watching Alex, Mack, and Clarissa, you should come absolutely check out our Patreon. We have live streams twice a month where we will watch some Nickelodeon, some not Nickelodeon, but it's all 90s based. We have exclusive content over there, and we have early access, quite a bit that we do, so make sure to check out our Patreon over at Patreon/Splat Attack, patreon.com/Splat Attack, patreon.com/Splat Attack. Clarissa was definitely a pioneer of fashion, and if you want to be a pioneer of fashion, you can get our No Ferg Face t-shirt that we have on our Bonfire page. Go to bonfire.com/store/Splat Attack Store with hyphens in between. Not only do we have Antichrist t-shirts, we also have all kinds of other Splat Attack merch. We have our logos and some homages to things like Are You Afraid of the Dark and Roundhouse and Legends of the Hidden Temple. We've not really done very much of those. So go check out our Bonfire page, bonfire.com/store/Splat Attack Store with hyphens in between.
Tune in next time, Slimesters, when we team up with the crew of the Krista for a review of the Space Cases episode, Both Sides Now. You can find all the retrorific action only here on Splat Attack.
You're watching Nickelodeon. Now back to Clarissa Explains It All.
All right, welcome back. We've got a little bit more to talk about, even though Tom and Mitchell weren't able to stick around, which, again, you guys didn't see this when we first started. Our Gackoids will get to see it. I mean, the two of them would just banter for a half hour, just sharing stories, and it's so fun. So they gave us 2 hours worth of time, and that pre-conversation before the episode, that conversation will go up onto Patreon, so go check that out. But that being said, there was a couple other characters that we really didn't get to talk about, more so with Alex Mack than with Clarissa. But one of them is Lewis. What do you remember about Lewis Driscoll?
Lewis he often told people he was from Cincinnati, like all the time. Made that part of his thing. He's from Cincinnati. No, he moved in second season, I think.
The second or third.
Yeah. And he was kind of like, he felt like a class clown to me, just kind of like that obnoxious friend that's no filter between his brain and his mouth. And he's actually a pivotal character in the finale. He's the one, I mean, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the finale after 25 years, but he's talking to Ray on his cell phone. He discovers Alex's powers. She shows him, like, comes clean to him. And then he's talking to Ray on his cell phone, and somebody from the plant intercepts the signal, and that's how they figure out Alex is the GC-161 kid. So he always seems to have good intentions, but he just kind of, he's that obnoxious friend that you thought, I love the guy who you say, I love him dearly, and then you just say something that he did to piss you off.
Either you or someone else in the group. Like, I love him, but I understand why other people don't. That kind of person. And then we also had Nicole, and she was very much the human rights activist within the group, where she was all about just rights for people and bringing recognition to a demographic that would often get overlooked, and then everyone else would be the other, whatever, and then she would correct, like, no, do you not realize? And they would pull out these facts. And I really liked it. That's a tough balance of a character for me, because they can be super annoying in television shows and movies. She really wasn't that way. At first I thought she was going to be super annoying to me, but she was really a genuine good friend. She was a good character.
Yeah.
She was a good person. And it wasn't the, it was like, no, this is an issue and this needs to be taken care of.
Okay.
And she had handled herself well. And I liked how she was written, because most characters like that, I don't.
She had a strong sense of justice, but she also had compassion, which I think, like, the heart was what made it not feel like lecturing or nagging. Like she stood for what she stood for, and she had her reasons why, and wanted to make the world a better place.
And that's pretty much it, because like Mitchell had said, there really didn't have a whole lot of, there'd be like one scene characters or one episode characters. It was mostly Sam, but
There were a
Gloria,
couple of friends that came in there.
I'm drawing a blank on who Gloria was.
Oh, Gloria for Alex. She owned the donut shop where Alex
Oh yes,
sometimes worked. So
yes.
she was kind of like, yeah, Alex would talk to her sometimes about things that were bothering her instead of Annie. Like when Annie, I think, got phased out a little bit toward the end. I think that they had that sort of that older sister dynamic.
And we also didn't really get to talk about this with them, but that's fine. We'll talk about the adversaries, because you've got to have them. Now, yes, the main one for Clarissa obviously was the Antichrist. But we also had a couple others, and the first one that I think of is Nona / Elise Soperstein,
Yes.
who was Michelle Trachtenberg. And most shows, I think they always would have that one babysitting episode. And
Alex Mack had one too. Yeah, the terror.
And they think they're going to be, and Salute Your Shorts had one, and they think it's going to be this nice little sweet person, and they're just awful people. And we've not really got to see Michelle Trachtenberg do that before, because she plays such a cool character on Pete and Pete, and Harriet the Spy is such a cool character. And then whenever you see her, she's always very fun, and she was awful in this episode. To the, whenever you're getting both Clarissa and Ferguson on the same side, you've got to really.
I don't remember if I saw Pete and Pete before, but I knew that, like, oh, that's the girl from Pete and Pete when I rewatched the episodes. So to see her play that character who would suck up to, because she had a crush on Ferguson. She'd be like, hey, Fergie.
Hi, Fergie.
Batting her eyes, and then she would just turn and just be an absolute terror. Like, I'd never seen Michelle Trachtenberg do like that visceral sort of, like she was the Antichrist at that point. She was like, I'm going to tell my parents and you're going to be in trouble. And it's just like, whoa, okay. So I enjoyed the performance, and I thought it was fun to, as the sort of an incident where Ferguson and Clarissa had to begrudgingly work together.
Mrs. Cheesebro, remind me who she was.
She was the guidance counselor. So there was an episode in season 2 called Miss Guidance Counselor. And the reason why that episode stands out to me is, I think, well, it got a lot of play, but I remember seeing it, and Mrs. Cheesebrow was concerned about Clarissa because she wasn't normal. She didn't do things that normal girls do. And I kind of wish we had Mitchell here to keep talking about it, but that was the whole point of Clarissa, was that she embraced who she knew who she was, and she was embracing that and did what she went after her own interests. And there was nothing wrong with that. Like at the end of the episode, I remember this I think this is what I remember most, was at the end of the episode, she comes to the Darling house and talks to Clarissa's parents about, I'm concerned because she's not normal. And then she sees how abnormal the parents are and gets on their case about it. And then the parents are like, well, no, they're defending themselves and how they raised Clarissa. And they basically, tell the guidance counselor off to get out of our house. And then at the end, Clarissa does a little cheer. Give me a W, give me an E, give me an I or a D.
Yes.
Spell weird. And they're just celebrating being weird. And as a kid who felt weird myself, I think that's one of the reasons why I gravitated toward Clarissa, because she was so self-assured. And if people questioned her, she didn't feel self-conscious about it. She thought something was wrong with that other person. Like, why can't I be me? So that's why Clarissa was aspirational for me, and Alex for other reasons. But that episode, the misguidance counselor, stuck with me throughout the years.
Oh man, if only that episode stuck with me as well. And by that I mean I was at an age when I wanted to be liked. I was Alex Mack. I wanted to be special and didn't feel like I ever was. But it wasn't until junior high whenever I stopped caring what other people think. Like I went from Alex Mack to Clarissa.
Yeah, Alex
And
was who I felt like I was too. So that's why I identified with her and I like her. And then she grew, but Clarissa was always so strong that she was aspirational for me, even as a young kid, like in elementary school. So
yeah, because in junior high, I was like, I don't care. I'm weird, and I know I'm weird. But for some reason, I know I saw that episode when I was a kid, but that didn't stick. As in the I wanted that confidence that the Darling family had. I wanted that, but I didn't know how to get there. Wasn't until junior high I was like, haha, now I don't care. I have no feelings whatsoever. But Alex Mack, there is a bit of a difference. I mean, well, there's not there is a big difference between the two, because whereas Clarissa, it's just a family unit and they're having squabbles and things like that. There are very, very clear villains for Alex Mack. But before we really get to the villains, we'll talk about the adversaries, the bullies and so on, because we had Jessica Alba, who he was actually talking about, Tom was talking about earlier, and she was the real preppy, popular one. And then we also had Kelly, who was pretty much the same thing, only later in the series. And she was around for a few more episodes than what Jessica was, if I'm not mistaken.
yes. So yeah, they were pretty much the popular girls, like the mean popular girls. And it just so happens that they both dated Scott, and
Oh
Alex had
yeah,
a crush on
yeah.
Alex had a crush on Scott. So it was adversarial because I think that those two, Kelly and Jessica, saw Alex as kind of a threat because she was just casual, cool, and introverted, and Scott was kind of interested in her. So then that made Jessica and Kelly just all the more fierce.
Yes.
Let's just say it that way, possessive and fierce. So yeah, the stereotypical, popular girl who felt threatened, I think.
And we actually talked about I'm pretty sure this is the same character, but we mentioned it very briefly in our last episode. We talked about the top 5 Nickelodeon bullies, and I couldn't remember her name at the time. It wasn't until I was doing the episode and I was pulling up the clips for it, but Joe was the one-time bully episode, which so many TV shows do that trope for one episode. But Joe was she did her job well, in my opinion.
Yeah, she seems mean for the sake of being mean, though, when I watched it.
Yeah. We don't know her backstory.
Yeah,
and
we
you're not
didn't
really
get a backstory. Yeah,
most of the time you don't get a backstory on bullies for one episode. If they're around for several, then you'll learn a bit more about them. Oh, either that or you devote an entire episode to them, and then like not how they affect the other characters, but here is the bully and here's why they do what they do and all that kind of stuff. It's a tough trope to do, but I mean, kids don't know that. Kids don't know that there's a reason that bullies do the things they do. But anyway, we're getting back into the bullies episode that we just did last 2 weeks ago. So we'll digress from that. But Joe she did a great job being the bully for that episode.
Yes. We want to talk about romantic interests of Clarissa and Alex Mack.
We didn't actually get to talk about the villains.
We didn't talk about that.
We went right past that because we did have yes, we had Joe, we had Kelly and Jessica, but Alex Mack had villains. And Miss Atron did no. she was the big bad of the season.
Played to perfection by Luann Gideon.
Yes. I mean, a fantastic performance. And she was very much the cool, methodical. I actually really liked what they did with her about halfway through the series, which goes directly in line with our second villain, which was Vince.
Mm-hmm.
Vince honestly is my favorite character of the series, to be perfectly honest. I absolutely love Vince, because the first scene, because it was him and then the bumbling doofus. And it was always that dynamic that you see a lot of times, the real straight-laced guy and the one who's always goofing around. And he would always, the doofus would always mess up Vince's plans. And it's never Vince's fault. But as the series progressed, Vince becomes more and more unhinged. And that's when I fell in love with Vince, because there was one episode when he was in disguise as an old lady sitting on a park bench.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up for him. Yes.
And I mean, a beach ball or a basketball just rolls past, and without even looking at the person sitting next to him, don't touch that.
Don't touch that.
I love it so much. But the reason he gets there is because he failed so many times in Miss Atron. Because we've always wondered, I don't want to say we've always wondered, but I've always wondered, how come the head boss just doesn't get rid of the person who's failed so many times? Why does Rita Repulsa keep sticking around with Goldar and all these other doofuses when they failed over and over and over to kill the Power Rangers? Why doesn't she do something else? And that's what Miss Atron did. She was like, you've had 2 seasons to get Alex Mack, and you've not done it, so you're fired. I'm here, Lars. You come in, and now we've got our other villain, Lars. And well, I've hogged the mic for Atron and Vince. What about Lars?
Well, Lars comes in. So Vince was head of security for Paradise Valley Chemical and Miss Atron. Lars was more sinister to me, I think, because he was the scientist. It went from let's catch this kid to let's catch and then experiment on this kid with Lars. And the series got darker, I think, when they brought him in, because then, especially when you talk about like Vince was the villain, if to have somebody worse than Vince and make Vince look inept like they did, then here's the real danger now. So yeah, Lars was all about hiding the truth about GC-161 from George Mack, Alex's dad, who was working, coincidentally working on the chemical at the plant. Danger now to Alex's family and to George. So I think that made him more sinister, in my opinion. At one point, they go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll say it in a minute.
No, there was that change, though, I think, from capturing the kid, and then they're like, okay, vaguely do away with the kid, but then it became like, let's experiment on the kid. And Lars was running experiments on other people to see what GC-161 could do. And then that's when it got really dark for me anyway. I was younger when it came on, but I was riveted. I was like, they can't actually mean they're talking about killing kids and experimenting on kids. Oh, they are. Oh, this is peril.
I loved the way that actor talked. This is real. Really slimy and swoopy when you would talk. And
I just wanted to say that some of the things you said I find very interesting. I mean, I don't see why we can't compare notes.
Yeah, complete stone face, would show no emotion, never smile, and this real slimy dog way he would just say things. It was like a really, if you took Marlon Brando's performance, like the vocal performance for Godfather, and just made it a bit more gravelly, it's just about how it sounded. It's so good. It's so good.
Like the slime of the universe, and not the cool kind of Nickelodeon slime. It was just like this guy.
No.
Well, I didn't talk about Dave in any aspect because he wasn't family. He wasn't a close friend. He wasn't really an adversary. He was just caught in the middle. But at the end, he did become a friend to the Macks because he was the one who called the FBI on spoilers again, on Danielle and the chemical plant, and sort of broke everything wide open. And he had found out that Alex was the GC-161 kid partway through season 4, I think. He was doing his thing where he wanted to get, I think he got like a how to be a spy kit or something like that. And he was sort of sleuthing, and then he discovered Alex using her powers. But his job after that point, when he realized that they didn't just want to find the kid to help them, right? Because his whole thing was like, oh, let's find the kids. So, oh, you're saying that we can give them an antidote and help them and make sure they're safe. Okay, I'll help. When he found out that they were going to experiment on and or kill the kid, it became his mission to protect Alex. And the very end, Alex realizes that, goes up to him, is like, oh, you knew this whole time and you kept it a secret because you knew I didn't want anybody to know. And then she hugs him. So he was like her protector in a way. So he didn't really fall into any of the categories that we were talking about neatly, but he's pivotal to the story. And, you know, he's just someone you kind of want to give him a hug. You know, he's a good dude. He was just mixed up in the wrong stuff, but he was a good dude.
But as for the romantic interests, both series had two romantic interests, and like they played out virtually the same. So Clarissa, you had Clifford Spleenherfer.
I love these names.
I
wanted to ask him how he came up with these names, because they were all sound very guttural and maybe a little Soperstein and Spleenherfer and a Cheesebrow. Like, where do you come up with these names? They're brilliant and cartoony, and I love them so much.
And Clifford actually started more as almost a bully. The very much the Fonz look, the leather jacket and the white shirt and the white t-shirt, blue jeans, torn jeans, and comb and all that kind of stuff.
Motorcycle dude vibes.
But ended up actually liking Clarissa, and Clarissa actually kind of liked him, and it was kind of cool to see that breaking that type of a trope, which was cool. Excuse me. And then we also had Polly.
I just think that with Clifford, it was cool because we find out that he likes Clarissa, and on my first watch, I thought that maybe she'd just reject him because he wasn't her type. He was kind of a bully. He was kind of stalker-ish, but he had a good heart. But she ended up going out with him, and then the Darling family kind of embraced him. Like he did the thing where he would, you know, knock on the door and go through the living room. Obviously, so like we saw how the parents sort of, it's like, oh, hi, how are you? And they accepted this is her boyfriend, and he's nice. Yeah. With Polly, the way his character came into play, I recall that Clarissa was dressed in costume as her alter ego Jade at that point, wearing the black spiky rock star wig and leather and the fake nose ring. And it started as a bit, really, I think. And she just wanted to, she ended up liking him when he interacted with her at a party. And then she wanted to then impress him. So then she tried to keep up this character of Jade.
Before it was cool on Victorious.
But yeah, that was more of a, it was the trope of let's try to have a relationship under false pretenses. So Polly wasn't around that long, but he did go on to star on Dawson's Creek. So James Vanderbeek played Polly, for any of you who don't know.
And then over on Alex Mack, we had Scott Green and we had Hunter Reeves. And I don't remember too much about these two either. I remember them. I rewatched the whole series. I like binge watched the whole thing, but I don't think they were on it very much, and they didn't leave much of an impression on me. So,
okay,
what do you remember of those?
Scott, I mean, Alex, from the get-go, I think from season 1, he was there with Jessica, right? So he was the heartthrob that Alex had a crush on for a few seasons, and I think they scattered him through a few episodes per season, so it seemed like he was there forever. And but he was kind of generic to me in a way, and I think Alex even asks him at one point, why are you seeing Jessica? Why do you bother with Kelly? Because those people are awful. And he was kind of, I think what maybe why she had an interest in him was because he kind of wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's like, yeah, she can be mean sometimes, but she's good on the inside. And okay, well, maybe he sees the good in people. Okay, that's a character I can get behind, trying to see the good in people. But after a while, I think if I remember correctly, he falls out of favor with Alex when sorry, my voice is going. He falls out of favor with Alex when he ends up just stabbing her in the back. Something about the newspaper. She was taking photos for the newspaper, and he lied to her and said that he loved them. and they were really good and artsy, but then he took the photos out and replaced them with Kelly's, I think. And it was basically, he was manipulative toward her. And then she just, the stars were no longer in her eyes after that. She was kind of done with him. Hunter came in season 4, I believe, late in the game. And he moved to Paradise Valley, and his dad, actually, we find out that Miss Atron murdered his dad. So he knows the plant is bad news, and Alex begins seeing him. And then in the finale, like, he's basically helping her try to run away from the plant and save the family, because his family was torn apart by Miss Atron. And that was the incident, I think, that made Alex have empathy for him.
All right. Well, that is, as far as we can recall, that's really all the big talking points for these two characters. But we do have the comparisons are still going to be made a little bit, because we are going to jump into our segment for the episode, and it's going to be obviously just Kat and I, and that's perfectly fine because I love picking her brain. And we're going to jump into our This or That segment. This or that, this or that, time to play This or That. All right, so for This or That, this whole the show notes for this episode were done by Kat. She always does fantastic, so I'm going to hand the microphone to her. So take it away for This or That.
Okay, This or That. Siblings, This or That. Annie or Ferguson?
Okay, an annoying smart character or an annoying smart character. One is the Antichrist. I don't want the Antichrist. No, I liked Annie. I really liked Annie. I know that Alex was often frustrated with her during the season or during the show, and she is kind of an insufferable know-it-all, but she also is constantly trying to look after her sister and wants better for her sister. And even though if Alex didn't want that, she's like, no, you're capable of better than this. And Annie's she is a great big sister, to be perfectly honest. Ferguson is a little jerkwad, so no, easily Annie.
Yeah, same for me, Annie. Her intentions were good, even if she was annoying at times. She wanted to protect her sister. Ferguson is, again, just a devil. He lives to make Clarissa's life hell. So yeah, Annie. Definitely would rather have Annie. Okay, best friends, Sam Anders or Ray Alvarado?
I'm going to say both. I love both of these guys. I one of the things that I didn't really get to mention while they were here, but they did, or at least Mitchell did say this. I love that they were both male friends to a female, and there was really no romantic tension. I think there was one episode of each show where there was that, but it was one episode and it was done. And I, as a kid, even now, I get along better with girls than I do with guys. Some of my best friends are mostly female, because in junior high and high school and elementary school, all the guys were that very stereotypical, oh, I like all these things. I didn't like the things that they liked. And I wanted relationships. I wanted friends. Which is more what girls were drawn to whenever I was that age. At least that's the way it seemed. And I reciprocated, and we became close friends. And I love that both Sam and Clarissa, Ray and Alex, could be very close friends and just be friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, and I think I read this in the book Slimed, Sam coming into Clarissa's room was perfectly fine. It was absolutely perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with that at all in the show, and nobody really questioned it. It wasn't until puberty started to really become a thing for Melissa Joan Hart, and then they were like, okay, we can't really have Sam just come into her bedroom now like this. So it happened far less frequently the later seasons because they were trying to be very conscious of that. But I love both these guys. They're both very fun. I honestly think the two of them would enjoy each other's company and very much just slide under the radar and enjoy life. But yeah, both.
Yeah, I feel like we could have a whole episode about best friends, just because I could talk about this for ages too. But yeah, I am also in the camp of both, because it's interesting that we were talking earlier how when your kids, in terms of the audience appeal, Nickelodeon didn't think that female-led shows initially would garner a male audience. But kids just saw kids on screen. It wasn't gendered, really, I don't think, because growing up, like, until puberty, like, yeah, sometimes, girls play with dolls and boys play outside, etc., like all those stereotypes, but they have a lot more in common when they're younger compared to when you might be in high school. But I think that the concept of, like, the lifelong best friend being a boy for Clarissa and Alex, like, that to me felt like something that I didn't like. We saw ensemble shows where girls and boys got along, but it seemed like in Pete and Pete too, with Pete and Ellen, it normalized friendships between other genders, because at a certain point it is kind of like on the playground, like, ew, boys have cooties, and stuff like that happens. But I had a lot of friends who were guys growing up too, because I don't know, my impression was, at least in my schools, the girls, there was some backstabbing, there was some of that behavior, and a lot of deception and just playing nice and then talking about somebody behind your back, like how girls do sometimes. So I found that the boys were just honest and genuine and just fun to hang out with and chill, and that was more my speed. I didn't have the patience or time for backstabbing and deception. So yeah, a lot of my good friends were guys. And I liked that was on screen too. So I think that, Ray and Sam have very distinct personalities. They aren't really defined by Clarissa and Alex, so they're their own character, but they're still very loyal to their friends
and to their fathers.
I like that they were well-rounded characters too. Yeah, that was something we should explore. Sam was he was the one who cooked. He was the one who did the stereotypical female things because his parents were separated. And his dad didn't know how to do that stuff. So that was interesting to see too, and progressive, I guess, in a way I hadn't seen before on TV. All right, this or that. I scrolled on my notes and need to find my place. Okay, after school job, advice columnist or donut shop employee?
No donut shop employee. I do not like dealing with people. I made it a very conscious effort whenever I was getting a job that I did not want to work in food, because I don't want to deal with customers who are frustrated with things that are out of my control. I mean, I know you're going to get that everywhere, but food especially, I've been out to eat too many times with family members who I will not say, who will just, they're never happy every time I go out to eat with them. Every time. So no. And advice columnist, I have a lot of, I still, even as a kid to today, I had a lot of people who would experience things and they would come to me and they would vent and ask for advice, and I would give them advice, and they keep coming back to me for different things, not the same thing 500 times, I should say. And it's worked out in their favor most of the time. I would say definitely more often than not. And I like trying to help people, so I would say advice columnist for me.
So I have a different take on this. So advice columnist, especially as a kid, if it's different for me when people who I know ask for advice. I do like to help people, but I think there's too much responsibility and too there's not enough context for advice columnists. I think there's the one episode where Clarissa is writing for the paper, and that way there's somebody who writes in who is extremely depressed, and they tackle depression, and I think they allude to as well in that episode. And just Clarissa's like, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
This is like, whatever I say is going to change this person's life. What do I do? And that's too much responsibility, I think, for me.
So I'll hand out donuts.
So I would no, seriously. I've worked in customer service, food service type situations before, and I mean, free donuts. I'm sort of Camp Alex here, where she's like, but I like donuts. I don't know. I think that would be fun. It would be fun. I would go with what I would perceive as the easier job, I think, at least emotionally for me. I would work at a donut shop. I give advice to friends, but I'd work at a donut shop. Career day. This is strictly within the realm of Clarissa. So would you rather hang out with Marshall Darling in his office building cool stuff, or hang out with Janet at the Children's Museum and make cool stuff?
Easy. I'd hang out with Marshall.
Yeah?
I love Janet. I think she's wonderful. I love the whole family, really. I mean, even Ferguson has. There are things about him I like, very few, but I love Marshall, and I'm very much a tactile person. I love to make things. I love to design things. I'm a very artistic individual, and I love what he does. I love his wildly eccentric architectural designs that he makes. That they are so fun, and I'd love to just sit with him one day and why this, how this, explain, please. I want to know. But Marshall.
It's so cartoony. I love it. His designs. I don't know. I think I would rather, I think, hang out with Marshall, but I would rather, in terms of working and volunteering, I'd rather volunteer at the Children's Museum. I think that could be a lot of fun. Yeah, I loved going to the museum as a kid. Like the Please Touch Children's Museum, like, yes, sign me up. I'm all over that. So I think I would, in terms of the job, then I'd hang out with Janet at the museum.
Yep.
Okay, so which uncontrollable power would you rather have? Would you rather glow when you get embarrassed, or would you rather burp bubbles randomly?
The idea of something coming out of me uncontrollably is just really unnerving. So I will just say glowing.
Oh, I would also say glowing, although I get embarrassed and self-conscious a lot, so I might be glowing 24/7. But yeah, that's less to deal with, I think. So I would also prefer to glow. Okay, relative. Would you rather have Clarissa's Aunt Mafalda as your aunt, or Alex's Aunt Ashley as your aunt?
I would rather have Aunt Mafalda. I actually do enjoy her, even though she's wildly eccentric. I actually had a couple who were very much like that. But she loves people, she loves her family, and yes, she is a lot. But she's fun, and she's seen a lot of wonderful things, and she is an experience. And you will want to make sure that you are in the clear when, like schedule-wise, when she's there, because you don't know what's going to happen. But I like her. I know Clarissa didn't care much for her, but yeah. Clarissa eventually was like, yeah, okay, she's not as awful as what I thought. But I like her. She's fun. So, and Mafalda.
I would prefer Mafalda as well. She's got a lot of big energy, but it's very endearing, and it's loving energy. Like, she's the annoying aunt that pinches your cheeks, right? Like, she doesn't mean any harm by it. She's not malicious. She's not backstabby. She's just loving, and yeah, I think I have to be in the right headspace for a longer duration of interaction with Mafalda. But yeah, I dig that energy. Okay, I didn't want to say pet, for this one. So I said animal friend, Elvis or Oscar. So Elvis is the small little alligator, crocodile alligator? Oh, small little lizard in the swimming pool that Clarissa has. Oscar is the monkey that gets doused with GC-161.
So monkeys in general are a lot. You give a monkey with powers, it's you're now on dangerous territory. I'm gonna stick with baby Elvis.
Yeah, I'm also gonna stick with baby Elvis. There's too much unknown, too much potential for disaster with Oscar. All right, that concludes our segment. Or this or that.
Okay. And incidentally, concludes our episode for today. It has been a lot of fun. I've loved getting to talk with Mitchell and Tom. And if you guys are still watching the episode up to this point, again, thank you both so much.
Yes, thank you.
But we are going to give our closing question for all of you Slimesters. So our closing question for the episode is, what made Clarissa Darling and Alex Mack aspirational characters for you? You can always write to us via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram, Facebook, all those wonderful social media platforms we use, at Splat Attack Podcast. Make sure, if you've not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. Interact with us wherever you can find us on social media. We're pretty active just about everywhere. But that being said, until next time, Kat, will you help me build a studio, please? I need to clean up all these lab supplies that I've been getting out.
OBKB, co-captain. I'm just gonna look over some of Marshall Darling's blueprints for inspiration. Oh, but it looks like you have some serious chemicals over there, so just be careful.
This stuff is harmless. I accidentally spilled some yesterday, and I'm fine.
Even so, I'm gonna call George or Annie Mack just in case.
Well, you do that. Splat you later, Slimesters. In the meantime, welcome to the secret world of Alex Nance.
Splat you later.
Want to get more Clarissa? Then check out Nickelodeon Online on America Online. Keyword Nick. It's the only place in cyberspace for Nick. Want to know more about Alex Mack? Then check out Nickelodeon Online on America Online. Keyword Nick. It's the only place in cyberspace for Nick.